Hey everyone, welcome to this exclusive production tutorial. This video marks a major update on my Patreon page. Starting from now, I will be releasing monthly production tutorials exclusively for my Platinum Patreon members. Each month, the Platinum members will get an access not only to the premium production templates, but the private production tutorials. Don't worry guys, I will continue to upload the free production tutorials on this channel, but this series is the flagship of my Patreon page. And I'm making this tutorial public just to show you what you can expect on the Platinum tier. All the upcoming tutorials in this series will be private and will be available only to my Platinum members on the Patreon. If you want to follow up these tutorials on a monthly basis and get access to both on the production templates and the private breakdowns, I welcome you to join the Platinum tier on my Patreon page. And now guys, no more words needed, let's go! Hey guys, welcome to the new production tutorial episode, and today we will break down the track by Adriatique called Never Alone. And first of all, let's break down the main melodic idea of this track, and it's coming out from the chords. And before we will start, as you can see, the track produced in 126 BPM and F minor K. Right now you're looking on the main chords of the track. And here's the small tip guys, when you're trying to produce the main idea of the track that is coming out from the chords and you're trying to pick up the right preset for this idea, just load up the basic grand piano sound and let's have a listen how this idea sounds with it. Okay, and let's get back to the Never Alone chords. And as you can see guys, we're starting this production tutorial in a breakdown, and in the breakdown we're using 3 different chords. The first 2 chord progressions are sounding in the breakdown, and as you can see, the third chord progression are perfectly produced for the build-up. Okay guys, and now we can move to the presets that will help us to recreate the main chords from this track. Here's the main preset that we'll use for the chords. Now let's listen to this. And as you can see guys, the amount of automations is massive, and it's exactly where the magic begins. The first automation that will help us to create this dynamic in the sound is the LFO. We are simply playing with the rate here. And now let's quickly look on the processing chain. Here is the before and after. First of all, we are using the reverb to give just a bit more space for the chords. And now let's look on the EQ. First of all, we are cutting off all unnecessary low-end frequencies. Right after, we are cleaning the mids. Also, we are boosting the higher frequencies using the shell filter. And the last one, we are cutting off unnecessary high-end. And as you can see in the breakdown, we are playing only with the LFO automation. And now let's move to the build-up. And as you can see in the build-up, the 5 automations are playing at the same time. As you can see, we're making slowly LFO automations, but at the same time, we're starting to open up the main frequency filter. Alongside of this, we're adding the reverb, the noise, and after filter automation. Yes, we're having the after filter here, and this thing is helping us to hide all the mud that comes out from all these automations. And I hope you can hear the difference. And now we need to add the second support layer for these chords. And here's the serum preset that we'll use for the second support layer of these chords, and this layer will help us to fill up the mids. As you can see, we're adding this layer only in the build-up and we will use the same notes. And also we will use the same automations, especially LFO ones. All the automations that we used on the main layer are coming to the second support layer. The main idea of adding the second support layer is to make the chord sounds more complex. Okay guys, we've done all the work with the main chords idea, and now let's move to the low end. And of course we will start with the kick. Here we will use the fat, punchy and tight kick. Now let's move to the processing. Right there we're cleaning unnecessary mid frequencies. Now let's boost this frequency to hear exactly what we're cutting off. And also we will add a few dB on the 5000 Hz to give the snap to the kick. Okay guys, we've done all the work with the kick and now let's move to the bass. In this track the Adriatique uses the two layers of the bass, and let's start with the sub bass. And here's the notes of the bass, not a big deal, the pretty repetitive rhythmic pattern. Now let's listen this bass with the kick, and here's the preset that we will use there. Here's the dynamic sine wave on the oscillator A. Now let's move to the processing of this bass and let's listen before and after. First of all, we will start our processing chain with the saturation. The saturation will help our sub to sound more tight and warm. And now we're moving to the main EQ. With the help of the first filter, we're cutting off unnecessary super low frequencies. With the help of the second filter, we're cleaning the resonance that comes out on the 85 Hz. The second EQ is helping us to create a lower frequency cut with the arrangement tricks, and we will come back to this EQ a little bit later. And now let's move to the sidechain. And first of all, you can see that I've already prepared the channel with the separate sidechain trigger. All we need to do is to set up the ratio here for the sub bass. And for the sub bass, we're setting up the most deep ratio from the all elements in the track. Okay guys, and now we're moving to the second layer of the bass section. This layer is the step bass that will create the dynamic in the bass section. Here's the notes. And here's the preset. And now let's have a listen to this layer in the mix. Now let's move to the processing. Now let's listen to this layer before and after. With all these effects, we're making the signal of the step just a bit more wider and clear. Now let's move to the EQ. With the help of this EQ, we're cutting off unnecessary sub-frequencies to avoid the conflict with the sub-bass. Also, we're giving a few dB to the body, we're boosting the higher frequencies, and we're cutting off unnecessary high-end. Now let's move to the sidechain, and all we need to do is to set up the ratio. And do remember guys that on the sub bass we're setting up the really deep ratio, and here on the second support layer we can set up the ratio around 1.25. And here's the small tip guys, on all support layers in the bass section you need to set up the ratio on the sidechain much less comparing to the sub bass. Okay guys, we've done all the work with the bass here, and now let's move to the drums. We will add the clap with a small press shifted tail to highlight the kick. Let's have a listen to the kick and the clap. And now we're coming to the secret weapon of this drum section, the element that really helps the bass sound much more punchy. And this element is tom. Now let's have a listen to this tom in the mix. As you can see guys, this tom is working really well alongside the stub bass. Right in the moment when the stub bass stops playing, the tom's filling up the space. Now let's move to the processing. As you can see, we're applying the EQ here and we're cutting off unnecessary sub-frequencies to avoid the conflict with the sub bass. Now let's have a listen to this tom in the mix again. And once again, let's review the notes of this tom, and as you can see, this tom starts playing right at the moment when the stub bass stops playing. Okay guys, the next element in the drum section is the shakes loop. First of all, when we're applying this type of the loops, we need to warp them. When we're working with the drums, we need to set up the beat swapping mode. Also, as you can see, if you want to play with the transients, you need to set up the forward and play with the amount of the transients. And the next element in our drum section is ride. This is the simple ride, and we will place this ride alongside the beats of the kick. And now we need to add the drum elements that will help us to highlight the transition from the breakdown to the drop. And we will start with the simple clap and after filter. Okay, the next element is the simple snare roll that we will add alongside the clap. And again, the after filter will help us to slowly open up this element. Okay, now let's have a listen to the moment when we're coming up from the breakdown to the drop. Okay, we're almost done with the drums, and now let's review the processing chain that we're using on the drum section. As you can see there, we're using the EQ and the compressor. Let's listen before and after. And first of all, the EQ. With the help of this EQ, we're cutting off unnecessary sub-frequencies, we're boosting a few dB and giving the body to the toms. Also, we're boosting the higher frequencies and cutting off unnecessary high-end. With the help of this glue compressor, we're simply gluing up all the drum elements in the track. Okay guys, we've done all the work with the drums, and now let's move to the synths. Let's start with the main lead and let's review the notes. As you can see in this track, the Adriatique uses the pretty repetitive rhythmic pattern. Simple 1/8 notes. Now let's deconstruct the processing and preset. This lead sounds really wide and detuned. Why so? All because of the unison and detune settings on the oscillators. Now let's deconstruct the processing chain. First of all, we're using the reverb to give them more space to the lead. With the help of the EQ, we're cutting off unnecessary low and mid frequencies, we're boosting the higher frequencies and cutting off unnecessary high end. And now we're moving to the sidechain. All we need to do here is to adjust the ratio. We don't really need such a huge pumping effect on the synths like on the basses, and because of it, we will set up the ratio around 1:20. Now we will deconstruct the arrangement trick with the notes of this lead. As you can see in the drop, we divided this lead by the two parts, the complex and simple. Just before this MIDI clip, we have listened the complex part, and right now we're listening to the simple. The only difference between the complex part and the simple is the progression of the notes. Okay, and right now we will add the layer with the mid chords. If you will listen to the original track closely, you can hear that on the background of the main lead we can hear these chords that sounds like a live vocal. This is the preset that we will use for this type of the chords. For the notes here, we're using the repetitive pattern that we're extending through the whole drop. Now let's listen this layer in the mix. Now let's move to the processing. As you can see, we're using only the EQ here. With the help of the EQ, we're cutting off unnecessary low-end frequencies, we're boosting the mid frequencies, also the higher frequencies, and cutting off unnecessary high-end again. And here is the small trick. As you can see, we're sending these chords and also the chords from the breakdown into the one section. Now let's apply the sidechain to this section. As you can see, the ratio here is 1:20. Okay, now we need to add the layer of the LFO chords. Here is the preset that we will use on this layer. For the notes, we will use the same chord notes that we're using in the breakdown. And also we need to use a few automations here to slowly open up these LFO chords. Only because of the LFO settings, the movement of the synth is such dynamic. And now let's move to the processing. We're cutting off the lower frequencies and just a bit of the body to make these LFO chords sound just a bit more lighter. Now let's have a listen to the full mix. Now let's move to the last element that we will add into the synth section is the atmosphere pad. We will use the simple preset, and let's deconstruct the notes that we will use for this pad. First of all, let's turn off the bottom notes and let's listen only the top notes of this pad. And as you can hear, without the bottom notes, this pad is losing the harmony. Okay guys, we've done all the work with the synths, and now let's move to the last element of the track, affixes and noises. And as you can see there, we're using the pretty simple noises. We're using these two sweeps to highlight the transition from the breakdown to the drop. And now let's have a listen to the entrance to the drop with and without the affixes. Also right there we're using the effects from the original track. Here's the simple snare noise fill, simple crash and downlifter. Okay guys, we just deconstructed all the elements of the track and now let's move to the arrangement. And of course we'll start with the intro. And let's start with the kick. As you can see in the intro of the track, the kick is missing the lower frequencies. It's because we're using the EQ with the lower frequency cut. And I hope you can remember guys that on the sub bass we're also having the EQ, and right now with the help of this EQ we will create a lower frequency cut automation. And right to the second part of the intro we're releasing the tension from the sub bass. Starting from the second part of the intro we're slowly opening up the mid chords. Right at the moment when we're coming to the first build-up, we're removing the lower frequencies from the sub-bass and we're starting slowly opening up the main lead. And right before the first drop, we're using a few automations to create an interesting drop entrance. On the main lead, on the mid chords and on the sub-bass. And as you can see, through the whole first drop, we will slowly open up all the elements one by one. right before we will open up the new elements, we will create this automation on the kick. Right there we will open up the rest of the drums and L4 chords. Right at the moment when we will come to the end of the first drop, we will switch the elements places. We will switch the main lead and the mid chords to the L4 chords, using the automations. And right now we're coming to the first breakdown. And here is the most interesting part in the breakdown with the bass. In this track in the breakdown, the notes of the basses are linked to the bottom notes of the chords. And here is the main breakdown chords, and we started our production tutorial with this element. The only difference here is the breakdown and the build-up are extended comparing our beginning of the tutorial. Starting from this moment, we will start opening up the main lead with the automations. And right there we're having the space right before the second drop, where the only vocal, the main lead and the mid chords are playing. The reverb automation on the main lead is helping to create this entrance to the second drop. And right now we're coming to the second drop that we deconstructed a few minutes ago. And as you can see, in the second drop we're opening up the main lead with the complex notes. And in this place we're having the notes that we didn't use on the main lead before. And now the structure of the second drop is pretty the same like the first one. Now we're slowly moving to the outro, and as you can see on all synth elements we're using the automation to slowly close up all the elements before the outro. Right at the end of the second drop we're removing the main lead. And here is the outro of the track. In the outro of the track we can hear the drums, the sub bass and the atmosphere pad. Yep, that's it guys, and that's how we produce melodic techno track in the signature style of Adriatique. Okay guys, that's it for tutorial. I hope this breakdown was useful for you and you got some ideas to use on your own tracks. And just a small reminder, if you want to follow up these tutorials on a monthly basis and get access to both of the production templates and private breakdowns, I welcome you to join my Platinum tier on the Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and please don't forget to leave your feedback in the comments and highlight the moments that I can improve in the next production tutorials. Thank you so much, and see you in the next one.